There's an idea that gets ingrained in our minds at an early age that I've come to think of as wrong. It's the notion that the best time to be anything is when we're the best at it. For example, the most enjoyment you'll find as a musician or as a baseball player is when you've made it, when you're selling platinum records, or when you're in the major leagues playing in front of thousands of roaring fans. It is because we are made to dream of someday being in these shoes where we are successfully the best. It hinders the time when we are actually at our best, and that's when we are rookies, novice, noobs. I think that this is especially true of anime as well. The most fun you're going to have as an anime fan is when you're first looking into the medium because everything is so new and fresh in our minds. It's refreshing. Japan and Japanese culture is just this mashup of eccentric and unconventional charisma, but at the same time they carry themselves in a formal and respectable way of life. I think that the perfect example of this is these photographs of salarymen sleeping in the streets. There's something undeniably charming about seeing these men passed out in the streets. It's within something so absurd like this that we see coming out of Japan that we can't help but think, of course this would happen in Japan. But the reason for these occurrences isn't something so outlandishly weird. The workflow in Japan is unrelenting, and that caused these men to pass out due to the sheer exhaustion of work. In that, there's nothing weird or outlandish about a man going to his job every day to put food on the table. But then again, these are men in suits passed out in the streets, and that's something that could never happen here in the United States. But bringing this back to anime, it's different, and that's why we love it. I can't really speak for other types of foreign animation programs because I haven't seen any. Even when I went out to Mexico as a kid, I would only watch American shows in Spanish.
Hijo, ¿estás bien?
No sé.
¡Bomba!
There's nothing like these types of shows being made in the States. Cartoons following a serialization is a fairly new concept in American broadcasting. Even shows like Adventure Time and Gravity Falls that have some type of continuity in their storytelling spread it out between episodes, and that causes it to appear episodic. However, I don't know if this was done intentionally. After hearing a few stories from different people about how they got into shows like Dragon Ball Z, they tend to say that they were blown away by the idea of a show with a continuous arc episode after episode, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. When I first decided to pick up anime in my young adult life, it was because I remembered that Rurouni Kenshin was something that I enjoyed when I was in 4th grade. Stumbling through the Toonami show list on Wikipedia, I clicked on show after show trying to guess the name of that one show about the red samurai with the cross-shaped scar. When I finally found it, I took to YouTube to confirm my findings, and I actually found the entire show on YouTube. So I spent the next week binge watching Kenshin and loving every minute of it. When I reached episode 54, I came to the realization that I was now on the latter half of the show's span, and I started digging up other old shows that I remembered watching. So after I finished Kenshin, I gave Yu Yu Hakusho the next watch. And unfortunately for me, only the first 22 episodes were on YouTube. When I had told my friend that I was digging up these old anime shows, he recommended me watching Inuyasha, and I immersed myself in that show as well. By this time, I had started to discover the world of Japanese animation, and I wanted to watch more, and I wanted to know more about this medium. Looking back on it, I think that this was the best time I've had as a fan of anime. I longed for the day when everything was new. Everything back then was a test trial, like going through a buffet and dipping your toes into each plate to see what it tastes like. That's right, your toes. But seriously, everything was something new. I had yet to be aware of the tropes that anime carried back then, like tsunderes, beach episodes, tournament arcs, and falling over and landing in such a way that leads this main character to accidentally grope the chest of that beautiful female lead. Every new show that I watched was a 10 out of 10 for the simple fact that it had cool fight scenes, or that it made me laugh my ass off. Sometimes even both. It was a great feeling going to your friends and telling them, yo, you need to watch this show, Baka and Test. You're gonna love it. This dude is an idiot. And then you show them a scene and they agree 100%. Or when you first find shows like Clannad After Story, because that's the show I accidentally watched first. Thanks Netflix for not having Clannad on your roster. And you find yourself wrapped up in blankets, feeling empty and wimpy because you don't know what you just experienced, but you know that you cried, and so you want everyone else to share this feeling with you. Now, I'm not going to claim that I've seen all this medium has to offer, because that's far from the truth. There are a ton of great shows out there that I haven't yet watched, but I know that I need to. The reason that this best time to be a fan is something that I believe to be real is because there's a moment when this glass shatters. For me, I had two moments. The first moment was when I started watching the samurai harem show that I can't even remember the name of.
That was easy.
But I found it so dull and uninteresting. That was the first time that I realized that anime can be boring. The next moment was when I sat down in my living room on a Saturday night and I tried to watch Chaos Head. I watched a few episodes when I realized that I didn't like anything that was happening in the show. That was the first time that I realized that anime can also be bad. It pained me to think of it because I was still fascinated by this medium. It's just that now I knew that not everything was going to be great. Let me share some perspective. I didn't even find this to be the case when I watched School Days, because even then I was captivated by the progression of this main character of going from shy boy to fuckboy to headless and dead. From here on out, that feeling that everything was a 10 out of 10 had fleeted. The rose-tinted shades had come off, and the thought of watching a show critically to determine if it was to my taste was becoming the norm. There's a street photographer named Erick Kims who has a blog in which he shares his life wisdom through the art of photography. In one post, he talks about the idea that being an amateur is much better than being a professional, because when you first start taking photographs, before you know the lingo, before you know the rules, before you know the gear, before you know what ideally makes a good photograph, everything is fresh in our minds. So going out to take photos is simply a pleasure for the sake of creating photos. It's once you know about the gear, the rule of thirds, the clients, and what is thought to be a good photograph, it's when it stops being as fun as when we first picked up a camera. We start to become focused on these fundamentals and we start to become cynical about our experiences. Similarly, we start to judge every first episode and we start rating it on a 10 out of 10 scale on my anime list. We start going on forums and making shitty YouTube videos to talk down on a show that doesn't live up to our expectations. With that said, this isn't something that can be exclusive to photography. Erick Kims really was my inspiration for this video topic. I really recommend checking out his blog, even if you're not into photography, because he's a great writer and he really does have these words of wisdom. I really love anime as a medium. It's one of the few things that has remained constant in my life for the past 6 years now, and the more I indulge in the medium, I've come to realize that I've been surrounded by Japanese entertainment my entire life. Let's have a discussion in the comments. Tell me about your experiences with anime, and if you agree with me on this idea about the best time to be a fan of anime. If it's not then let me hear about your ideal best time to be a fan. Have a wonderful day, and thanks for watching.